Final Fantasy is a long-beloved series, releasing their first title in 1987. But in the year of 1997, Squaresoft would release arguably its most popular title to date and one of the most famous games of all time, Final Fantasy VII. At the time of development, this title had the highest budget for a video game ever, modernising its pixel art style to now a more modern 3D style, whilst also incorporating a grand story to keep up with the visual upgrades. The game's story follows Cloud, a mercenary who joins an eco-terrorist organisation known as Avalanche to stop a world-controlling mega-corporation from using the planet's life essence as an energy source. Events send Cloud and his allies in pursuit of Sephiroth, a former member of the corporation who seeks to destroy the planet. FF7's combat system is very unique and different to other relatable titles such as Pokemon or Dragon Quest, using a battle system known as Active Time Battle, or ATB for short. A simple explanation is there is a time gauge next to where your HP is, and when the bar has filled up, the character can then action their next move, whether that's an attack, spell, or even throwing an item. The time gauge can fill up at various speeds depending on what materia or spells you have equipped. The ATB can be altered and has 3 different options the player can set. Active means the gauge fills up during an attack animation, and also whilst navigating the menu. Recommended stops the gauge from filling up whilst an animation is going on, and lastly, wait will not fill the time gauge when in a menu or during an animation. During the speedrun, players will often alter between active and wait to perform specific strategies and battles. Okay, I'm now going to explain the different versions of Final Fantasy VII and the rule sets for each one, as each version is unique from one another. The original version released exclusively in Japan in January of 1997. This version is not used in any of the current categories, as the encounter rate is roughly 20% higher than the other 2 versions on PS1. Another interesting difference is the original release does not have the Diamond Weapon fight, so when you finally encounter Diamond Weapon on the world map, it just skips to the next sequence. If you wish to learn more about the differences with this version, I highly suggest checking out Diesel's new video breaking down the differences between the original release and the international release. The North American version released in September of 1997, and worked to lower the encounter rate, translate the dialogue to English, as well as other languages for European regions, and alter numerous other elements of the game, such as nerfing rival chocobos and speeding up the refill of the limit bar. There are countless other changes, but none of these alter the speedrunning experience, so I will leave the differences there, and now explain how the rules work for this game. The North American version is timed from selecting New Game to the final hit on Sephiroth. Glitches are also welcomed in this version. The last thing about the rules of this version is that turbo controllers are banned from the leaderboards. There are now variables which allow for turbo controllers, but this category is not very popular. The international version released in Japan in October of 1997, and in all honesty is the exact same as the North American version. The North American version is also known as the international version, but I named it differently to correlate with how the speedrun leaderboards are structured and how to make explanations easier. The rule sets, however, are very different from North American. The timing starts when turning on the console and ends when the Final Fantasy VII logo shows at the end of the credits. By using this timing method, players are not as likely to manipulate RNG before starting the game, as much time is often wasted setting that up. Lastly, turbo controls are allowed for this game. The timing and version differences have been in hot dispute for many years, as the gameplay between Final Fantasy VII North American and International are identical, excluding the language and the speed of the text boxes. But the way the rules and timing methods are structured means that unity between the pages is not very viable, as both versions have advantages and disadvantages, if you want to call it that. If you were to merge International with North American, then all international players would be handicapped not having pre-game manipulation. However, on the other side, North American players would be disadvantaged by playing on a slower version of the game and also being required to mash text boxes rather than using a turbo controller, which in all honesty isn't too major, as players can mash to the game's top speed if good enough. As these disputes are still ongoing, I personally don't see major changes happening anytime soon. However, this allows players and spectators to be actively more involved in whatever version they prefer. There are many different versions of any percent for this game, so I'll start off with the fastest version of any percent for PS1, better known as slots. In this category, the objective is to complete the game without any restrictions. This means that the player is allowed to use Cait Sith's limit known as slots, which is an ability that allows the player to select 3 slot reels. If you are to successfully hit the Cait Sith face on all 3 slots, then all enemies will be defeated in one attack with a move known as Game Over. The slot reels always start the same, so it's possible to master and time the slot reels. However, for fights with multiple phases, there are setups which help. Any percent no slots is the most popular category in this game. This version of Any% plays out quite similar, but bans the use of Cait Sith's slot limit, which creates different route options and different battle strategies. This category is the most self-explanatory. It's similar to Any% slots, however bans all major skips in the game, which creates a more familiar experience to what players normally go through when playing the game. Turbo controls are not allowed, as well as pause buffering Cait Sith's slot limit. The PC version of Final Fantasy VII was made by a company called Eidos, with a small team of 20 people working on the game. The game's code was 80% rewritten, which brought many optimizations with how the game would run. Within this rewritten code is an exploit which would lead to the game's infamous wrong warp. To fully explain the tech and history behind this warp would take far too much time, so I'll recommend an amazing video from 4A Productions. To keep it simple, the game has 5 different engines for different parts of the game: field, menu, battle, world map, and minigame. Traditionally, the game transitions from field, to battle, to menu, to field. However, in the Nibelheim flashback, the game runs a flag known as No Rewards, which is written in the code of the game to not reward the player with experience or items during this sequence of the game. The order of the modules that load is altered, removing the need for the menu module, as you cannot gain experience during this part of the game. This knowledge leads to a glitch known as battle mode warping, which allows a player to warp to a different area of the game they previously visited. The way this works is by saving a game in the world map, entering the Nibelheim flashback, and intentionally dying, which will set your flag to No Rewards. By then reloading the world map save, encountering an enemy, and then defeating them, it will warp you to the last set field ID located in Mount Nibel. It was later figured out that you could run away in the world map encounter, and whatever battle you last ran away from would then be the new field ID. After looking through hundreds of different field IDs, the encounter was found that would warp you to the field ID for the debug room. The debug room is a location which was only intended for developers to use when making the game. Within this room you have full access to everything in the game, and it is possible to unlock characters to your party such as Vincent, as well as maxing out your stats and warping to the end of the game. Any% is very unique, with its emphasis being on confusing the game's logic to advance the player as far ahead as possible. If you are looking for a shorter category, this might be the one to try out. The game determines when a player gets an encounter and what that encounter is based on 3 values. These values always start at the same number every time, and there is no RNG in terms of how these values change. So players can use a combination of consistent movement as well as both running and walking steps to advance those values in the exact same way every run. What happens within those encounters is still subjective to RNG, but you get the same enemies and same formations each time. The step route itself is an optimization, not a requirement, but being prepared for all of your encounters is an extremely useful resource. On this screen, there are 2 guards blocking your path. This is to make sure that you don't leave Midgar early. However, it was found that there is a very small gap between the right guard and the geometry. By lining up Cloud with certain parts of the screen and inputting specific movements, you can manipulate Cloud's position to line up with that gap and walk straight through. This skips the entire second reactor mission, meeting Aerith and fighting the guards with the barrels, roughly saving around 20 minutes. Honestly, this trick is so complex and difficult to explain, I will give it the shortest synopsis I can, but please afterwards check out this video from Ace Zephyr, who delves deeper into the trick and explains the science behind it all. Essentially, the skip is performed in the world map by pushing Cloud onto this mountain here, which will store something known as a mesh triangle, which is coordinates of Cloud's position on the map. Since the game cannot load the entire map at once, only certain sectors are loaded in, and each area is defined with an area code. When mounting a chocobo, your triangle coordinates do not update, so it's possible to move away from the area, which will deload the area code for where Cloud was originally standing. When returning to the area code, it will reload a new area code number. The game basically gets conflicted and loads Cloud onto the ocean water below, which allows the player to run to Junon. This skips the Nibelheim flashback, saving close to 20 minutes. This would be the end of my explanation, however a new method to this skip was later found, which applies similar science to before. When dismounting your chocobo in this position, Cloud will spawn in the air, which allows you to run up the mountain and store your mesh triangle coordinate in a unique position. By then remounting the chocobo, deloading the area code, then returning and repeating the same dismount as before, you are then able to walk through the mountain and head straight to Junon, which makes Zolom skip no longer an issue. Cosmo Canyon skip is done by moving the buggy to specific pixel perfect positions in the world map, using only cardinal directions, which means no diagonals, to travel to Cosmo Canyon. By then putting the buggy in 2 more pixel perfect positions, getting out and back in, this allows you to drive the buggy past the trigger of it breaking down and sending you to Cosmo Canyon, saving 12 minutes. During the scene with Reeves and the Shinra heads, there is a skip that is performed here almost unknowingly called Midgar skip. By holding X and right when Reeves answers his phone, it will move Cloud on his first possible frame, which will spawn the party into the next scene, skipping the return to Midgar sequence, saving 10 minutes. This glitch does have a downside however, when performed, there is no music for the Hojo fight. After defeating Hojo, the victory theme will loop until Save for Sephiroth, where it will return to silence until the ending FMV plays. You can fix this by saving and reloading, but this is not normally done in the speedrun as it wastes time. I've only scraped the surface with tricks and glitches for Final Fantasy VII. I mainly wanted to cover the most significant glitches in this game, which saves the most amount of time. If you wish to learn more about glitches such as Photo Skip, Save Crystal Glitch, or more, there are so many videos out there from amazing creators who break down the lore and setup for these tricks. I hope this video has been a good introductory into the world of Final Fantasy VII speedrunning, and why this may be the series you wish to delve into the future. Another great thing about the community is each of the games are very connected with each other. A lot of the players' footage I have shown today are also runners of Final Fantasy VIII and IX, which were also released on the PlayStation 1. If you wish to get involved, I will have a link in the description which links to the community's leaderboard and Discord. I do love making these retrospectives as it helps bring new spectators to the hobby in a simplified way. I've been in the speedrunning scene for almost a decade now, and whenever I look into a new speed game, I do find it overwhelming learning all the terminology and differences between versions and categories. So if you wish to see more content like this with other games, please let me know what games you'd like to see in the future, and also drop a like and subscribe. I'm Saiyans, and thank you for watching.